The Philippines recently passed two new maritime laws, the Maritime Zones Act and the Archipelagic Sea Lanes Act, which define their maritime boundaries and sea lanes. This move has indeed irritated China, as it includes areas that China claims as its own, such as the Scarborough Shoal and parts of the Spratly Islands. In response, China summoned the Philippine ambassador to lodge formal protests, stating that these laws infringe upon China's territorial sovereignty and maritime rights. In the lecture side of this geopolitical tension, we see a lot of diplomatic exchanges, formal protests, and public statements. China has summoned the Philippine ambassador to lodge formal protests over the new maritime laws, urging the Philippines to respect China's territorial sovereignty and maritime rights. This is akin to the theoretical discussions and debates in a lecture hall. On the laboratory side, which involves real-world actions, there have been confrontations at sea, with reports of Chinese vessels blocking or making dangerous maneuvers against Philippine vessels. This is where the practical, on-the-ground actions take place, similar to experiments and hands-on activities in a lab. Regarding the U.S.-China trade relations, Trump has indeed been vocal about his stance on China, and his return to the White House could lead to renewed trade tensions. 6. This could potentially shift focus away from Russia temporarily, but it's a complex geopolitical landscape, and predicting exact outcomes is challenging. The region is certainly tense, but whether it will escalate to a full-blown conflict is uncertain. Many analysts believe that while tensions will continue, a major escalation is not expected in the near future. The situation requires careful navigation to avoid pushing the region into war. The prospect of conflict is always troubling, especially when it involves the younger generation. The history of colonization and past conflicts in the Philippines has indeed left deep scars.
Based on the recent developments in China-Philippines relations, several key issues and trends have emerged. 1. Territorial disputes. The South China Sea remains a major point of contention between China and the Philippines. Recent incidents have escalated tensions, including collisions between Chinese and Philippine vessels near contested areas like the Second Thomas Shoal, increased naval and Coast Guard presence from both sides in disputed waters, the Philippines' efforts to strengthen its maritime claims through legislation like the Philippine Archipelagic Sea Lanes Act. 2. Economic relations. Despite geopolitical tensions, economic ties remain significant. China continues to be the Philippines' top trading partner. The Philippines withdrew from China's Belt and Road Initiative in 2023, signaling a shift in economic strategy. There are ongoing efforts to address trade imbalances, with China pledging to increase imports of Philippine products like fruits. 3. Diplomatic engagement. The relationship has seen both cooperation and challenges. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has held high-level meetings with Chinese President Xi Jinping, focusing on economic cooperation while addressing territorial issues. The Philippines has been engaging more with the United States potentially as a counterbalance to China's influence. There's an increased focus on multilateral approaches, with the Philippines looking to strengthen ties with other ASEAN countries like Indonesia. 5. Public opinion. Filipino sentiment towards China remains complex. A survey indicated that most Filipinos would not support pro-China candidates in the 2025 elections, reflecting concerns over national security. There's growing skepticism among Filipinos about China's sincerity in negotiating South China Sea issues. 6. Regional security. The Philippines is strengthening its defense capabilities and alliances. Increased military exercises with the United States. Exploring security partnerships with other countries like South Korea. In conclusion, while economic ties remain strong, the China-Philippines relationship is currently strained by territorial disputes and shifting geopolitical alignments. The Philippines appears to be diversifying its international partnerships while still maintaining economic engagement with China. Based on the current situation, while tensions are high, an outright war between China and the Philippines, or the U.S., is not imminent. However, there are several concerning factors. 1. Escalating tensions. Recent incidents in the South China Sea, including collisions between Chinese and Philippine vessels, have increased the risk of conflict. 2. U.S.-Philippines alliance. The United States has reaffirmed its commitment to defend the Philippines under their Mutual Defense Treaty, potentially increasing the stakes of any conflict. 3. Philippine stance. The Philippines has taken a more assertive approach in defending its territorial claims, which has angered China. U.S. strategic interests. While the U.S. is supporting the Philippines, it's not accurate to say the Philippines is being pushed to be a pit to trap China. The U.S. has strategic interests in maintaining freedom of navigation in the South China Sea.
5. Difference from Taiwan situation. The Philippines situation is distinct from Taiwan. While both involve territorial disputes with China, the geopolitical dynamics and potential for conflict are different. 6. Economic ties. Despite tensions, China and the Philippines maintain significant economic relationships, which could act as a deterrent to outright conflict. 7. Diplomatic efforts. Both sides have engaged in diplomatic talks to manage tensions, though disagreements persist. While the situation is tense, both sides seem to be trying to avoid outright military conflict. However, the risk of accidental escalation remains a concern. The U.S. support for the Philippines is part of its broader strategy in the Indo-Pacific region, rather than an attempt to use the Philippines as a trap for China. Several prominent analysts have provided insights on the Philippines-China situation. Here are some of the key voices and their perspectives. 1. Alan Chung predicts that Trump's potential return to the White House could lead to a more confrontational approach with China. Suggests Trump might arm the Philippines for a confrontation in the South China Sea if Beijing doesn't cooperate economically. 2. Don McLean Gill describes the situation as being at a critical juncture. Emphasizes that the ball is in the court of the USBH alliance, suggesting that the next moves by the U.S. and Philippines will be crucial. 3. Ewan Graham warns that the situation is shockingly close to an incident that triggers the MDT between the U.S. and Philippines. Suggests that current deterrence efforts are not working effectively. 4. Jeffrey Ordaniel criticizes the U.S. response as insufficient, noting that pressure is growing for the U.S. to actually do something beyond just copy-pasting previous statements. Questions the effectiveness of joint maritime patrols, stating they have done absolutely nothing to deter China. Gilbert Teodoro emphasizes that there is no international support whatsoever for China's narrative in the South China Sea dispute. Characterizes China's approach as relying on brute force strength and might. Huech Sitvien warns that China is likely to take more coercive actions in the air, making it difficult for the Philippines to defend its sovereignty. Suggests China may use tactics like scattering thermal flares or creating turbulence to interfere with Philippine aircraft. 7. Song Zhongping defends China's actions, stating that any Chinese military moves in the South China Sea airspace are due to what he calls illegal expansion by the Philippines. Asserts that areas like Scarborough Shoal and Second Thomas Shoal are China's sovereign territories. These analysts provide a range of perspectives, from warnings about escalating tensions to critiques of current diplomatic and military strategies. They highlight the complex nature of the situation and the potential for further conflict if not carefully managed. Based on the analysis from various experts and the current situation, the likelihood of an all-out war between China and the Philippines remains low. But tensions are certainly high, and the risk of escalation is concerning. Here's a summary of the key points. 1. Low probability of full-scale war. Most analysts suggest that while tensions are escalating, neither China nor the Philippines wants an outright war. The economic and geopolitical consequences would be severe for both sides. 2. Increasing risk of confrontation. There's a growing risk of accidental escalation due to the frequent maritime incidents. Ewan Graham from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute noted that we are shockingly close to an incident that triggers the MDT. 3. U.S. involvement. The United States has a mutual defense treaty with the Philippines, which significantly complicates the situation. Any major conflict would likely draw in the U.S., raising the stakes dramatically. 4. China's strategy. China appears to be employing gray zone tactics, which involve aggressive actions short of outright warfare.
4. This approach aims to assert control without triggering a full-scale conflict. 5. Philippine capabilities. Unlike Ukraine, the Philippines does not have the military capability to sustain a prolonged conflict with China. The Philippine military is significantly outmatched by Chinese forces. 6. Economic considerations. Both China and the Philippines have strong economic ties, which serve as a deterrent to full-scale conflict. 7. Diplomatic efforts. There are ongoing diplomatic efforts to manage tensions, including recent agreements on communication hotlines. While it's difficult to assign an exact percentage to the likelihood of war, based on these expert opinions, the chance of a full-scale war remains low, perhaps in the 10 to 20% range. However, the risk of limited skirmishes or escalated tensions is much higher. Regarding whether the Philippines can fight China, the military imbalance is significant. Unlike Ukraine, which had a substantial military and received extensive Western support, the Philippines would struggle in a direct confrontation with China. The Philippines is more likely to rely on international support, particularly from the United States, rather than engaging in a direct, prolonged conflict with China. The situation remains tense and unpredictable, but both sides seem to be aware of the catastrophic consequences of all-out war, which serves as a significant deterrent.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Where should I talk about next?